this year, and we're going to do combined Parsha and Chanukah. Okay, we're going to start from Chanukah, and we're going to start with a piece from a sefer that a lot of people were talking about last week. There was a Rav, the Bat Ayin, Rav Dov from Avrich. His Yortzeit was on Shabbos. Good evening. Right, Rav Avram Dov of Avrich, and he moved to Tzvat. And many famous stories about him. But while I was looking through the sefer, so I found this piece in his writings on Chanukah, but it ties into this week's Parsha. He asks about the Gemara's definition, Masechah Shabbos, about what is the time that we're supposed to light the Ner Chanukah, or that it's supposed to be lit for. So it says, Mitzvasa, the mitzvah of Ner Chanukah is Mishatishka HaChama, until the sun goes down, Ad shetichle regel min hashuk, until there are no more feet in the marketplace. Okay, we'll see a little bit more about that in a second, these feet in the marketplace. Now, it's a very strange type of measure for the mitzvah. Good evening. Shalom Aleichem, good evening. So it's a very strange measure for the mitzvah to say Misha Tishka Chama, until the sun goes down, from when the sun goes down, Ad shetichle regel min hashuk. Right? They say a famous story. There used to be a theater on Rehov Strauss, the Edison Theater, and once a year you would see the Brisker Rav, Velvel Soloveitchik, would go and check the movie times. And people were not sure. They'd ask him, why are you checking the movie? He says, because for me, his house was near there. That's Ad shetichle regel min hashuk. I want to keep my Chanukah neiros lit until after the last show, that people see for the Pirsumei Nisa. Okay, so the Bas Ayin says like this. He says, he starts off with something that goes back to Avram Avinu's discussion with Ephron. Chazal said, Tzadikim omrim ma'at, va'osin harbe. Sign of tzadikim, right, is they don't say so much, but they do a lot. Rishoyim omrim harbe. Rishoyim talk a lot. Va'afilu ma'at einosim. Don't even do a little. Like Ephron. Okay? What are those, 400 shekel? No big deal. So he says like this. He says, we're supposed to serve Hashem. Avodas Hashem is supposed to be in three aspects of our lives. Machshava, thought. Dibur, speech. And Maisa. Right? And all of those should be connected to Hashem. Okay? All of those things should be connected up, and that's how a whole Jew goes through life. His thoughts, his speech, his actions are all l'shem Hashem. He says, then that's what's called shaveh. Okay, now here, there's a bit of stuff, the sources are in Kabbalah, we're going to have to take it as an axiom that it's called shaveh because shin represents machshava, thought, vav represents dibur, speech, and hey represents action, doing. Okay, he brings the sources there from the Tikkunei Zohar and the Eitz Chaim and all these things. So he says like this. He says, tzadikim who are connected throughout in everything that they do, he says, therefore, they accomplish a lot because what they think and what they say translates into what they do, and it's all for a joint purpose. But he says, where do the Rishonim fall apart? He says they think sometime and they want to do something good, but when it comes to the doing, that's where the break happens, right? That ability to take it from the thought and the dibur to actual action, right? He says that's where it falls apart. In the Chovas HaTalmidim of the Piasetzner Rebbe, he has a very powerful line. He said, sometimes there are people, when they talk, you think that they're tremendous Ovdei Hashem. But then you discover, he says, Rak Ratzon Lahem. All they have is their desire, but it never translates into action. Okay, that's a very hard junction, that one where it goes from the thoughts and the speaking to action. Now he says, really, Kol Ish Yisraeli Rotzeh Lavod et Hashem b'machshava v'dibur shelo. He says, really, a Jew, certainly in his inner thoughts, inside we believe, like Chazal said, every Jew, Ritzoneinu lasas ritzoncha, wants to do the will of Hashem. And many times they will say that in one way or another. But he says, when it comes to the Maisa, that heat, that chamimut, that enthusiasm which was there, kind of cools down. and he can't get it into the Maisa level. Where does that cooling down come from? From our Parsha. From this Malach that wrestled with Yaakov Avinu. Okay? Why is that? It says that the injury that the Malach, who was the Sar Shel Esav, the spiritual force behind Esav, that injury that he gave Yaakov was Bekaf Yerecho, right? It's always translated as the sciatic nerve or something, it's someplace there, right? We have the Gid HaNoshe. Now he says that means it damaged his leg, right? What that means is that he somehow twisted his leg. Now the leg represents Maisa, represents action. Right? The Maharal explains, why is it we stand with our feet together when we're davening? On one hand, they say, Malachim are described that way in the Novi, Ragleim Regel Yeshara, but it means that we aren't doing right now until Hashem tells us what to do. Right? It's that sense when your feet are there and they're not moving, so you're not doing. Okay? That limits the idea of doing. So here he somehow twisted it. So he says what he did is he twisted that letter Hey, which represents the Maisa, and that turned the Hey into a Kuf. Okay? Meaning, Hey and Kuf, oftentimes there's some stories that say that Kuf is called Kuf because it's like Kuf bifnei Adam. It's like a monkey compared to a person, meaning a Kuf is almost a twisted form of Hey. Right? It's something, it's like the Hey, but somehow it went down. So from the idea of Shaveh, which would be when your thoughts, your words, and your deeds are all together, here that got broken before the Maisa, before the action. So how's that tie into Chanukah? He says, when we said the mitzvah of Ner Chanukah, right, that is a time where we have to strengthen ourselves in the actual doing. And we're going to see why in a second, why that was so key to the conflict with Yavan. And he says it's specifically at the time, so to speak, when your sun goes down, meaning everything was clear to you and you were excited. You had that heat, but then mishatishka hachama, right? Chama means sun, chama also means heat or enthusiasm. So he says there, ad shetichle regel min hashuk. That word shaveh, which got turned into shuk, the hay got turned into a kaf, you have to eliminate that regel of the shuk. You have to eliminate that little leg that's coming out there and get back to Shaveh, where you are doing and speaking and thinking all together as it should be. Okay, that's a little bit complicated, but it will hopefully make it clear now. So that's from the Basayin. Yeah. Okay, now, this is his piece on Chanukah. Yeah. So now, it gets like this. It's a very strange type of measure for when you do the mitzvah, that it's not a set amount of time or set time, right? We estimate, we always talk in the halacha, it's about a half hour after, whatever time you're lighting, however you define the tzeis, and things like this. But Rashi says, right, explained, the Gemara said, what is ad shetichle regel min hashuk? It was referring to a special nation, the Talmudoi. Right? Until the Talmudoi pack out of the marketplace. Who were the Talmudoi? Rashi said they had a particular line of business. They would sell small kindling wood, and they would stay longer in the marketplace because people go home and suddenly they realize the guy's wife says, honey, did you pick up wood for the fire? And he says, oh no, I forgot. Well, it's going to be freezing here tonight and I'm not going to be able to cook supper. So he has to go back to the marketplace. So they were the last basta that would close in the shuk, right? The Talmudoim would stay there. So that's, so to speak, the measure. Now, the Shem Shmuel fascinatingly says, this isn't the only place we meet the Talmudoi. And also, why does the Gemara even mention it? Meaning, who cares who they are? Ad shetichle regel min hashuk, till there are no more feet in the marketplace. Do we care if they're Italian feet, French feet, Talmudoi feet? Feet are feet. He says the Talmudoim we bump into in the Medrash in Breishis Rabbah, where the bracha v'yirash zaracha es sha'ar sonov, right? Your children will inherit the gates of their enemies. Rebbe Omer ze Talmud. Rabbi Huda Anasi, they say today was his yard site. So this refers to the nation of Talmud. Ashrei kol mi shoro'eh b'mapalosa shel Talmud, right? Fortunate is the one who sees the downfall of Talmud. The Talmudoim were involved in both of the destructions of the Batei Mikdash. So he says, therefore, says the Shem Yishmuel, he says, the regel of the Talmudoi, that represents the lowest of the low, the most physicalized, lowest deeds which are there. The light of Chanukah, its purpose is to be able to light up the world of the market, so to speak, the Olam HaMaisa, the world in which you do things, so that even the most external, most physicalized people are influenced by it and illuminated by it. That's what the Talmudaim are doing there. Okay, so now let's take a look. During this whole battle that Yaakov had with the Malach, with the Sar Shal Esav, he has a name change. Okay? And the Malach tells him, he says that your name will no longer be called Yaakov, it will be called Yisrael. Yaakov, the name Yaakov represents the following. Yud, the letter Yud always represents machshava, thought. Before we said Shin represents machshava, Yud also. Yud's much easier to understand. Because if you look in the Ktsav Ashuri, like in the letters in the Sefer Torah, every letter starts with a Yud. The way a Sofer writes it. The top, the beginning stroke of every letter is really a Yud. You extend it, you do it, but it's interesting when you look there, there's always the Yud. So Yud is called thought, machshava keduma, that point, that pintle from which everything starts. So Akev is the heel, the very bottom of a person's body. Yaakov represents, first of all, consistency, head to toe, so to speak, or head to heel, right? That what Yaakov thinks, his truth, his emes is expressed in everything, and especially the Akev, which is what we walk on, which again is his Olam HaMaisa, meaning the Seichel, the mind, the thoughts, guide his Olam HaMaisa. Now, he gets a very fancy new name, Yisrael, which is an idea of mastery, but it also has in it the word Yashar, said Rav Moshe Shapira, straight. Now, he said there's a danger with a person who's walking totally straight. Person who's walking totally straight, it's beautiful. He remains on his course, but he can not see dangers. He cannot see things that perhaps he has to eliminate on the way. He's just going. Yaakov is guided by his seichel, his feet are guided by his seichel, and he takes a clever path, and that lets him be Yisrael, and then he's able to express his straightness by starting off with Yaakov. Okay, because the seichel is paying attention, and then he gets the name Yisrael. So if we want to kind of put it down basically, Yaakov represents the name that guides us in the down and dirty world of day-to-day life, the struggle, right? That we have to, there's a beautiful piece that I saw in Pirkei Avos, right? We have the four animals that we're supposed to imitate, emulate, right? We're supposed to be Gibor Kari, Kal Kanesha, Ratz Katzvi, Ve Azkanomer, okay, which ties into Chanukah a lot. Now, I saw a sefer, it's called Maskil Shlomo. It's by someone whose name was Reb Shlomo Karlbach. He was a cousin of the famous singer. He wrote a beautiful sefer. And there he said, isn't Ratz Katzvi, running like a deer, kind of the same thing as Kal Kanesha, light as an eagle or swift as an eagle? Eagle's fast, deer is fast. Both of them seem to be telling me, go fast to serve Hashem. He says, but there's a big difference. The beauty of the deer's speed, of the Ratz Katzvi, is that the deer is running very fast over difficult terrain. Right? You go out in the woods and you make a noise, suddenly that deer races off incredibly fast, but he's going over rocks and trees and twigs, and he manages to make it through there. The speed of the eagle is because he rises totally above that. A Jew is supposed to combine both, meaning simultaneously, on one hand, we're in this world, and we need to work our way around the obstacles like the deer. But on the other hand, we have to remember that there's a higher aspect of us that really is above all of it. So in certain ways, that's Yaakov and Yisrael. That's that combination which goes together. So the Chasam Sofer says a fascinating thing. The Chasam Sofer says that the Malach who spoke to Yaakov, who was the Sar Shal Esav, was trying to pull a fast one over him. Labriut. Right? He says Yaakov, I'm never good with gematrias, but he said if you write Yaakov with a vav, fully, right, as it's sometimes written, Yud Ayin Kuf Vav Beis, and Yisrael together come out the equivalent of Kara Satan, to tear apart the Satan. Right? We find a similar thing in the psukim that we say just after the first Kiyas on Rosh Hashanah. We say psukim there that the Roshei Tevos, the first letters of each pasuk, spells out Kara Satan. So he says we need both of those names to overcome the opposition to us, the Satan or the Yetzer Hara. So he says the Sar Shel Esav told Yaakov, Lo Yikarei Od Shimcha Yaakov Kim Yisrael. Okay, we're going to drop the Yaakov name now. Okay, we're sidelining that. And your name is only going to be Yisrael. Like Avram was no longer called Avram, he's Avraham. Okay, Sarai was no longer called Sarai, she's called Sarah. He says, you are now going to be Yisrael. Okay, meaning Yisrael alone, only. He says, but with that only one name, he won't be able to overcome the Yetzer Hara as he's supposed to. When HaKadosh Baruch Hu speaks to him, he starts off, he says, Shimcha Yaakov, your name is Yaakov, right? You're also going to be called Yisrael. And so we find that's brought, it says in the Gemara, that a person is not supposed to call Avram Avinu Avram anymore, but Avraham. But Yaakov retained his original name. He needs the combination of the two. He needs those two stages. He needs the ability to fight the Yetzer Hara both on that ideal plane of being Yashar, but also in the Yaakov world of navigating and dealing and fighting with his things in the day-to-day. So there was a Rebbe, the Rebbe of Kosovo, who was the first kind of the root of the Vishnitz dynasty. So he says like this, what is this idea of Yaakov? He says, Yaakov in Yisrael goes like this. He says, Tzadikim Gedolim are always Devekim Belokim. Tzadikim are always connected, they have Dvekus, they're always connected to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, right? They always have that Wi-Fi connected to Hashem. But he says, but Am Yisrael needs help in Inyone Gashmias. Am Yisrael needs help in their physical things day to day. And the tzaddik isn't just here to have dveikus with Hashem. Tzaddik is sent into this world to help Am Yisrael. The story I liked, there was the Munkach Rebbe back in Europe, the Darkei Tshuva. So his son, the next Munkach Rebbe, the Minchas Elazar, was a young man. And somebody came in to see his father and get a bracha. And when the person left, the father said, no, the son's also a holy person. I'll ask him for a bracha. So he came and he asked him for a bracha, and he gave this long, detailed bracha that you should be zoche to do tshuva shalema and to understand, the secrets of Torah and to be able to see Mashiach tzidkenu b'meherav yimenu amen, etc. His father called him over. He says, let me teach you something. When a Jew asks you for a bracha, give him a bracha he likes. Give him gesund, good health, parnasa, and nachas from his kids. He said, that's the kind of bracha you should give. Okay, so tzaddikim are there to help people take care of themselves in this world. And that's why it says, Moshe Rabbeinu, vayered minahar el ha'am. Moshe Rabbeinu was on Har Sinai, but you got to go down to the people. So he says, this is the idea of Yaakov Avinu. He says, ki sarisa im Elokim, meaning you elevated yourself to a level that you always have this connection to Hashem. But in the day-to-day human involvements, you're also successful and you also are able to maintain that dvekus. Okay, so this is why the Malach now had to somehow admit to Yaakov that the brachos were coming to him. He already got brachos, but not this aspect of the brachos of the world of Esav, the world of Asiyah, the world of doing, that he would be able to be successful in that and to maintain his dveikus in that world which is there. Okay, so that is the Toras Chaim. One of the strange gezeras that's described in Chazal at the time of Chanukah is brought in the Yerushalmi. It says that the Greeks told the Jews, Kisvu lochem al keren hashor, write on the horns of your oxen, Ein lanu chelek belokei Yisrael. We have no portion in the God of Israel. That's very strange. Okay, some of Farshim there in Yerushalmi say They want it to be publicized. They wanted Jews to deny their connection to God. The Maharal explains that the shor represents nature. Okay, this is the beginning of an agricultural cycle starts with plowing the land. Plowing the land is done with an ox. Okay, meaning the Greeks wanted to tell the Jews, you talk about your Torah, your Dveikus, all this kind of stuff. You need an ox just like we need an ox, right? You depend on nature like we depend on nature. We want you to write on your ox, I have no chelik in Elokei Yisrael. Why? Because Elokei Yisrael ain't plowing your field. You have to plow your field with an ox. The Maharal says that they were trying to echo to them Cheta Egel. Egel is a baby ox. Again, that idea, they said, you recognized it yourselves in history. You need nature. You need to succeed in this world in the regular systems. And there's no connection to God. You want to sit in your room and rock back and forth and learn things and daven and think about God? That's fine. But when you come to the real world, you got to turn it off. Okay? Because it is irrelevant there. So this was what we were fighting against in that way. That the idea that it maddened the Greeks that yes, we have to live in their world. Yes, we utilize the same wisdom that they use in understanding the world to succeed here. But while we're doing it, we're entirely different. We're doing it for different purposes. We're doing it in different ways. Even though it's true, we are in nature, but we're also above nature. We're the deer, and we're also the eagle.
So the Yaakov and Yisrael.
Correct. So that's why we have those two aspects, and that's why it's so key. So in Siva Shalom, the Slonimer Rebbe brings down from the Toldos Yaakov Yosef. Toldos Yaakov Yosef was really the first Hasidic sefer. He wrote down the teachings of the Baal Shem Tov. So he said on the Mishnah in Pirkei Avos, Tov Torah im derech eretz. Torah, it's good to combine Torah with derech eretz. What does he mean? He says, Kasher yudi osik b'torah tefillah mechavin libo li'os davuk b'Hashem. When you're involved in learning and davening, it's not so hard to connect your thoughts and heart to Hashem. Haravusahi, the big, push, the big plus is li'os davuk b'Hashem, right? When you're osik b'derech eretz, when you're involved in all the same day-to-day things in this world. That's tov Torah im derech eretz. Meaning if you can succeed in doing that combination, to be connected to Hashem while you are doing these things, okay, so then that is a tremendous level. And that is the level that Yavin was fighting against, and that was the level that the Sar Shal Esav wanted to fight against. He didn't want Yaakov to be able to succeed functioning in this world while still being in Oved Hashem and still having that dveikus in HaKadosh Baruch Hu. This can help us understand why Chanukah is a holiday in the work week. Many people say that, when they're in their offices and, they're telling them about the holidays they're going to need off for the year. So the boss says, and I guess you're going to need a week off for Hanukkah. No, I can come in. I might leave early some days. Wait, but Hanukkah is your big holiday, right? So the answer shouldn't be, it's not that big. We say Hallel every day. That's big. But why isn't there an Isur Melacha like our other Yom Tovim? Exactly this, because the whole message of the Yom Tov is that we are in days of work. We do all the melachas, but we're Chanukahdik. But we overcome Yavan in that time, in that way. That's why it's supposed to be set up like that. So let's just finish with the picture. What does this mean to be going through your day-to-day with dveikus in Hashem? So number one is the idea of always turning to the Torah when you have a dilemma, to see how and what you're supposed to do. Right? I think it was Rabbi Avram Shor, but he brought it from someplace. It says, after the Churban, Ein lo la'akadosh baruch hu ba'olamo ela arba amos shel halacha bilvad. After the Churban, all Hashem has in the world are the 4 amos of halacha. And many people explain that to mean shuls and yeshivas. But what shul is 4 amos big? What yeshiva? 4 amos is one person's personal space, like we see in Hilchos Shabbos. So he said what it means is when you're going out there in the world, doing all the necessary things you have to do, and you come to a dilemma, and you say, I wonder what the halacha is in this case. That's the Arba Amos Shel Halacha. Your space is that special place of Kedusha in HaKadosh Baruch Hu's world. So that's one way. The other way, Rabbi Yisrael Salanter asked a very Muslimistic question about a medrash of Chazal. Chanoch, that character who we see in Bereshis, it says that Chazal say he was meyached yichudim. He was unifying God's name while he was making shoes. He was a shoester. He was a shoemaker, Chanoch. Okay, so Rabbi Yisrael Salanter asked, how is that right? Somebody brings you his shoes to fix. What do you think in Kabbalah while you're doing his shoes? Either you're not going to do it well enough, or you're going to take too long than you would have otherwise. You have to concentrate. He said that's how he was miyached yichudim. By realizing that Ratzon Hashem is that I deal honestly with my customers, and that I give the best quality product that I can. And that in that way, it's not that, yes, even though I'm doing all this physical stuff which isn't connected to Yiddishkeit, I'm still thinking of Torah. No, this is connected to Yiddishkeit. This is the idea, Ad shetichle regel min hashuk, the Ner Chanukah lights up all the physical things that you're doing, everything which is there. So therefore, while he's doing that, right, he puts himself into it because that's what Hashem wants from him in that situation. That's what the Ner Chanukah is supposed to teach us. It's a light which extends very far down. It's a light which goes everywhere. It's for him to say, you see, even though the Beis HaMikdash existed during the time of Chanukah, no celebration of Chanukah is tied in to the Beis HaMikdash. You take it with you wherever you go. It's meant to light up. You got a business trip to wherever, to China on Chanukah, you take your little Chanukah along, right? You take some candles or oil, and there, wherever you are in China, you light it up. You brought the light of Chanukah there. It is everywhere. It goes everywhere. And it's that expression of the victory. Again, the hints are, it says Yaakov went back for pachim ketanim, for these little jugs before the Malach attacked him. So there's trying to connect those pachim ketanim to the pach echad shel shemen, to that little pach of shemen that he found. That Malach was fighting against that power of Chanukah, because that is what enables us to win on all fronts, even in the world of Asiya, of doing, of Esav. Not that we don't do, but we do in a very different way. That's the idea of Yaakov and Yisrael, and that's the idea of lighting ad shetichle regel min hashuk, right? Until the shuk, the marketplace, stops being a place where we lose our shaveh, where we lose our connection of mind, dibur, and maisa, but it comes the field in which we express that in everything we do. That's the thing.